Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. It's the hurling review show and the football review show. We'll be looking at the football action a little bit later on, but joined here by Seamus Brady from On Cliff for a review of the weekend's action. We're going to be looking back at all the big games, all the big talking points, and certainly plenty of talking points, no doubt about that. Obviously, starting off with the hurling, Limerick progressed. They are through to another Munster final. They beat Waterford comfortably. Clare beat Tipperary as well, which then means Cork do survive. Cork do progress in the third position, and they will be getting out of the Munster Championship, whereas Waterford and Tipperary will be the two teams who exit the Championship. In Leinster, not much really happened. You obviously had Antrim beating Carlow, Kilkenny beating Wexford, and Dublin beat Galway as well, but it's not really, So Dublin, Kilkenny in the Leinster final, not too bad at all, and obviously a few games in the John McDonagh as well. All were dead rubbers, but still some interesting results nonetheless. And we will be looking at the football action a little bit later on. I suppose, first of all, Seamus, not a bad weekend. And I suppose Dublin beating Galway, it's rare that the hurlers take the spotlight away from the footballers, but felt like it's kind of happened in the past week or so, especially with the minors, the under-20s, obviously, as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And thanks for having me on again, Aaron. Like I was saying, it's probably the first year in a long time where you're looking realistically at having more Dublin fans attending the Leinster hurling final than the Leinster football final. I feel like there'll be a good crowd for that Dublin Kilkenny game. It's a double header with the John McDonagh final, so there'll be a few Offaly and Laois fans in attendance as well. So it has the makings of being a great day at HQ. But yeah, big weekend, and I'm sure we'll dive into the Dublin game a lot, but I was very impressed with our performance. I thought we were the better side. We were deserving of our win, and we're into the Leinster final now, which at the start of the year I would have absolutely snapped your hand off for that. So delighted with the progress that has been made by the lads. Micheál Donoghue, only a second year in the job, he's absolutely smashing it.
Absolutely, and I can't wait for that Leinster final. I did hear though, apparently they're not opening the hill, which I think is a little bit unusual. One of my mates said that to me.
It was asked, Dan and myself were talking about it on the GA hour there. It'd be very strange if they didn't open the hill.
It'd be a little
considering
bit
that they opened it for the Roscommon game.
Yeah, be a little bit strange if they didn't go and do that, in fairness. But we'll crack on with the Munster Hurling Championship action. It was I suppose firstly let's have a look at the league table just to remind ourselves as to how things concluded. So Limerick and Clare are in the Munster final. Cork are in third. They go into the preliminary round. They'll play the winners of the Joe McDonagh Cup in the prelims, and then they'll play the runners-up of the Leinster final in the quarterfinals. Waterford and Tipperary both exit the championship. So, the big game in Munster, it was Limerick and Waterford. Finished Limerick 30 points, Waterford 14. I suppose a lot of people expected Limerick to come into this game, to win this game. We were expecting a huge fight and a huge battle from Waterford. Even though it was a 10-point win, I did think Waterford did battle, and they did battle hard. But what did you make of this game?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting game. Waterford definitely were plucky. They were difficult for Limerick for long periods. They definitely put it up to them. They dug their heels in and they were ready to scrap. They were ready to fight. But there were two things that were very noticeable. Number one, they weren't scoring enough points. They were finding it extremely difficult to put the ball over the bar. And it seemed like they were reliant on getting those goals to keep them in the game. Limerick looked like they were far more comfortable in terms of actually putting the ball over the bar. It looked like they were exerting a lot less energy in doing so. I liked Davy's interview after the game. He just was very honest, said, look, we weren't the better team this time. Limerick were the better side. And that was kind of refreshing to hear him, especially considering last week when he completely flipped the lid. Look, Waterford lost their spot in the Munster Championship when Sean Keneally hit the back of the net for Tip. That's when it went up in smoke, because in a Munster Championship where you need to take every opportunity, Waterford, fresh off beating Cork in round one and then having home advantage against Tipperary in round two, it was right there for them. And Davy had them absolutely, turned up to 110 on the way in. You saw the video of him slapping the lads on the back on their way into the dressing room. And just to get a draw out of that and not get the win, I feel like that's one that they left behind them. And then obviously the 65 incident with Clare. I'm doing the rounds on this, so I would like to ask you this as well, Aaron. with that situation with the 65, and obviously I'm not going to bang on about it because it's last week's issue, but do you think that there should be a third option in those scenarios? Say, because the umpire, yes, he made the right decision, but I was saying, like, it's basically like he called heads on a coin flip and it landed on heads. He got it right, but it doesn't mean that there was any, you know, any ability or like genius to his decision. He guessed. And do you think in those situations that there should be a third option of throwing the ball in on the 45 or on the 21 rather than just giving a 65? Because when you give a 65, the players are so good now that the umpire pretty much had a decision as to either give the 65 and give Clare the win, or give a puck out and give Waterford the draw. So do you think that there should be a third option of throwing the ball in?
Yeah, like it's not a bad shout in fairness. I suppose like if the umpires weren't sure and they were 100% not sure, you know, it's the last resort. The referee isn't sure as well. Then yeah, you probably could do that. But I think it probably
then
is.
He could blow it up. If Waterford win the throw in, he blows it up immediately, game over. But if Clare win the throw in, they get one more shot.
They get a chance, yeah. I think though it is quite rare, in fairness, that you get umpires and referees that aren't able to see it. I think more often than not they would be able to see that. I think the referee was in a poor enough position, like from watching the game back. Fair enough, the umpire has to stay close to the goals. So look, that's understandable, but it's one of them. Like, you know, like only some people are even saying he got it right, and maybe he already knew he got it right, and we're guessing that he guessed it.
If he got it right, tell his face.
Yeah.
Fella looked like a guy who'd woke up from a night on the piss and he picked up his phone and he had all these messages from people from the night before. He looked like terrified. He looked like an oh crap moment. Like he was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think ultimately though for Waterford, this like that wasn't where they lost the championship in my opinion. Like Clare and Limerick are probably the two best teams in the country, in my opinion. And I think Cork, on paper right now, you'd have to say are number 3. Certainly don't think Kilkenny have gone away. Kilkenny are definitely still very much in the mix, in my opinion.
Really?
But I think they're still there. I know they've struggled a little bit. But the thing about Kilkenny, though, is they're still winning. They're still winning games. Do you know, they haven't lost a game all year. I think they're the only team in the championship, I think, that hasn't lost a game so far this year.
That is crazy when you look at it that way. But I just don't know. Like compared to the Kilkenny teams of the 2010s, I don't think this team is as good. Like when you put them down and say that they're 4 in a row Leinster champions, like I don't know.
I think they're they definitely are very beatable, and like we'll touch on it maybe when we get to Dublin. Like I think there is a very good chance Dublin can beat them in that Leinster final, but I don't think Kilkenny have clicked into gear though. Yeah, like I think they've just been like, even against Wexford, I thought Wexford surely should, you know, and we'll get to some of the decisions and everything that were in that game. Yeah, so definitely some interesting ones in that game as well. But like for Limerick, mad thing about Limerick in this game, Shamie Flanagan goes off after 20 minutes. Could be a big injury. We'll obviously see what happens there. They already have injuries in terms of Peter Casey. Obviously, Darragh O'Donovan's back in training, but obviously didn't feature. Mike Casey's only freshly back. You don't have Sean Finn as well. Like the injuries are massively piling up. But I think the most interesting thing from a Limerick perspective in this game was the fact that Cathal O'Neill now looks like an absolute world beater. Like he looks like he's coming into his absolute best, and he's in the best form I think I've saw him play since he came into the Limerick team. You've got Shane O'Brien, who's a young lad, looks absolutely brilliant. You've got Conor Boylan coming off the bench, making an impact. Adam English as well. So like Limerick are finding even more players to make an impact. We know what Cian Lynch can do. We know what Aaron Gallan can do. We know how good Gerard Hegarty is. But they're finding even more lads now. And I think that's actually very dangerous for the rest of the country.
It is. It certainly is. And there's a few more names like Donegal Dálaigh got the goal against Clare, which would made a huge difference. You have, on top of that, you have Fergal O'Connor, who slots in whenever he's needed at cornerback and is very close to having a starting position. You've got Colin Coughlin, who's been waiting in the wings there for a while for the Limerick half back line, but unfortunately for him, it's probably the strongest line in the team. Like their depth of talent is astonishing. Their panel is just frightening. And if you made a second Limerick 15, you could argue it definitely would have a shot again now with Leinster anyway. Like, their depth of talent is absolutely extraordinary. And yeah, going into this game, look, Waterford were always going to be up against it. It had the look that, like, you couldn't have picked a more difficult assignment for Waterford than this game. You couldn't have. It's such a difficult task to go away to Limerick and try and beat them. Like, it genuinely is, especially when Limerick are on the line. That's what I was saying, is that Cork showed in the game where they actually beat Limerick. Cork showed how high a level you have to get to beat them. They showed, like, it's literally ridiculously good you have to be to beat Limerick. But I was saying, I think the level is even higher than that now, because Limerick weren't in danger in the Cork game, but they were in danger in this game. So they were going to fight to the bitter end to get the win in this game. And I just thought, going down the final stretch, Waterford ran out of gas and Limerick powered on. And they got a 10-point win out of a game that was relatively close throughout. It was only in the last quarter that Limerick really pushed on and kind of left Waterford for dust.
Yeah, like, do you think, having looked at Limerick in this game, like, I think Hall Hayes looked probably the best we saw him all year. 3 points from him. Keane Lynch was fairly quiet enough, I felt, but that point at the end, like, oh my goodness me, absolutely ridiculous stuff. Like, just that was almost like a reminder of, like, I'm still here, like, I'm still the man, I'm still not gone. Maybe he's been struggling a little bit for form and obviously had multiple injury issues and everything else. But he obviously slots one over the bar towards the end. So, like, well, is this it now? Like, will Limerick be stopped from here, or what do you think? It's going to be very hard now, because he felt like if you need to get rid of them, you need to get rid of them in Munster. And, you know, obviously they do have lads injured. They do have a few lads coming back as well. And there is a bit of a gap between, obviously, 2-week gap now between the Munster final. Then I think another 2-week gap before the All-Ireland semi-final. So they do have time now to work on things, Limerick.
They do. The thing is that how the championship is shaping up in front of them. You look at this, right? If Limerick win the Munster championship, let's just say that they do. Let's say Limerick find a way to beat Clare in the Munster final. It's very likely they play Cork, in my opinion, in the All-Ireland semi-final, because Cork will probably beat whoever they get from the John McDonagh. And then I would fancy them to beat either Dublin or Kilkenny that come out of the Leinster final, the form the Cork are in right now. So Cork would then be waiting for Limerick in the semi-final. I mean, that game in Croke Park would be sensational. And then you'd have Clare on the other side against Kilkenny or Dublin, whoever wins the Leinster championship. So you could have a situation where Limerick have to win the All-Ireland by playing only teams from Munster, which would be just mental when you look at it that way. Yeah, it's mad. Like, genuinely, the Limerick have had to beat Galway in the last 2 years in the semi-final. Galway way off the pace this year. They're not going to be any issues to anybody this year. And yeah, so it's an incredible situation. And I think it's somewhat written in the stars. When you combine the fact that Clare and Limerick have never played each other in an All-Ireland hurling final before, and you look at this as well, that you have a situation where you look back on all the historic 5-in-a-row pushes. It's usually been that county's biggest rival that's been waiting for them in the 5-in-a-row clincher. Like Kerry Offaly in 82, Dublin Kerry 2019, Kilkenny Tipperary 2010, and now Limerick Clare 2024. Wouldn't really bet against it. And imagine the billing going into that game. If Limerick have the chance to gain immortality by beating Clare, and if Clare have the chance to stop Limerick at the final hurdle, like, that would be one of the most anticipated hurling matches of all time.
Yeah, it'd be an absolute iconic final, and absolutely would be. A2 says here, only Cork can stop Limerick, in my opinion. Plenty of other comments flying in relation to obviously the Dublin game and some of the decisions and everything else. We will get to them. But anyone who is tuning in, if you could hit the like button and subscribe, that'd be absolutely brilliant. Before we go on to Tipperary, Clare, just on Waterford, they done themselves proud. You reckon Davy Fitz still be there next year?
I think he probably will still be there next year. Like, they definitely showed signs this year of improvement, and the players definitely are willing to give their all for him. And there's no question about that. Like, usually Davy Fitz has kind of a you're either with him or against him type thing, and he burns white hot with his team, no doubt about it. Like, that's why he usually has only lasted 3 years. at the helm at most of the counties he's gone to, because he burns at a level where players eventually burn out. And I feel like with Waterford, he definitely went 100 miles an hour from the start of this year, and he definitely had an aura about him that he felt like his back was against the wall. But in this game here, like, Waterford did fight for him. They fought for him in the Clare game. They fought for him in the Cork game and in the Tipperary game, to be fair. So if you're looking at things like a grain of rice has separated the teams, and you look at Waterford and you look at the players that they were missing this year that they could have had, like Austin Gleeson stepped away, Pádraig Mahoney stepped away before the start of the season, Shane McNulty stepped away. Then you've got Stephen O'Keefe, Barry Coughlin, Philip Mahoney, who all just opted not to play again this year. And you look at that situation and you say, like, if they had all of them bought in, who would have bet against them getting over the line against Clare, getting over the line against Tipperary, and getting out of the Munster Championship? Because when you have like the grain of rice that separated them from beating Clare, if you throw those players into that Waterford team and make them better, because all of the players that I listed there, I think they would all start for Waterford, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely would. Yeah, like, and you think back to last year, how flat they were, really, like when they had so many of them available. It is mad to think. Raymond says, don't think either Munster finalists will fancy facing Cork again in a semi-final. For once, it might be a strategic advantage to lose the Munster final. Yeah, say that to Limerick going for 6. Yeah,
because you know what is nuts?
I understand it. I get where you're coming from, obviously, because of the fact that you'll be playing probably Kilkenny. You probably have to play Wexford and Kilkenny en route to an All-Ireland final, which is probably easier than having a one-off game against Cork in the form that they're in. But
would Clare want to play Kilkenny in a semi-final? Like, they don't seem to usually beat them.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Look, Clare haven't won a Munster title in donkey's years. Like,
that's what is nuts. Clare haven't won a Munster title since 98.
98, yeah.
Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell, they don't have Munster medals. They have all Ireland medals, but they don't have Munster medals. You explain how that works.
Absolutely. Yeah. A2 says Croker will suit that Cork team speed too. Wayne says here, great content, lads. Keep it going. Yeah, absolutely. Cheers, Wayne. Appreciate that. Raymond says Wornley for Clare. They're not putting teams away. Only be 14-man. Cork by 2 points. Be Waterford by 1 point. And Tipperary by 3 points. Clare leaving opposition hanging around in games for too long. Yeah, that moves us on to the other game. It was Tipperary 24 points. Clare 124. Look, Tipperary did make a game of it. Like, there was a few changes, obviously, in the side. Sean Keneally came in, 3 points. Connolly in there with 2 points. Jake Morris looked back to his best with 11 points. It was better from Tipperary. It was still a loss, but it's a bit of a, I don't know, they're going out of championship feeling a little bit better about themselves, having obviously been hammered by both Cork and Limerick. But look, Clare got over the line. Would you agree with that comment there in terms of some worries for Clare with the fact that they're not exactly putting teams to the sword?
I don't think they'd be too worried about this one, because I feel like this was just a game to get through. This was one to just go in there, get the win and leave. And it's still a very talented Tipperary side. They were awful against Cork, but they're still a good team. And for Clare to go away to Semple Stadium and beat Tipperary by 3 points, it's never a bad day at the office. So they've got the win, and Tipperary definitely had all the eyes on them. Like I was just saying, like, that was probably the worst performance I've ever seen from a Tipperary team, the one that they put in against Cork. That was such a bad performance, especially in the second half. It was one of the most bizarre second half performances I've ever seen. So all eyes were on them, and everybody was looking to see whether or not they could bounce back. And they went out there and they did play with pride. They led at half time. They were right in the game, and it turned out to only be the Dermot Ryan goal that separated the two teams. So it's a marked improvement from the Cork game, but it was slightly tinged tainted, I would say, when the Liam Cahill interview happened. Did you see that after the game?
Yeah, it was a little bit unusual.
Let's be real, right? Did the reporter phrase the question badly? Yeah, he could have phrased it a bit better, but you knew what he was getting.
Fair question. I think it was a fair question.
You knew he was getting at it. I'm just saying, like, devil's advocate, he could have phrased it a little bit better, but everybody knew what he was getting at. And for Cahill to act like it was such a stupid question to ask, it's like, mate, you alluded last week that you were going to leave Tipperary in a better place. What the hell does that sound like it means? It sounds like you are stepping away. That's what it sounds like. And on top of that, you did put in one of the worst performances we've seen against Cork. So it would make a lot of people scratch their heads and think, what the hell is going on here? And there were a lot of Tipperary fans who were saying, you know, we need to move on. We need to get someone like Brendan Cummins in. I heard a lot of people shouting for Liam Sheedy to come back, everything like this. Like, there were shouts like that going around. So Cahill, objectively, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that I know what it's like. I've never been in the position under pressure like Liam Cahill has been in terms of getting questioned like that. But you need somewhere to have your answer ready. And my perfect answer is, the first one is, you need to acknowledge the bad performances that you have had. You need to say something. Like, his answer should have been, in my opinion, something along the lines of like, yeah, look, we know that we didn't play well enough this season. That standard isn't acceptable for Tipperary hurling. We have players that are ready to kick on next season. We have the young lads coming through. We have the under-20s coming through. We're going to go away, put the work in the off-season. We're going to come back next year and we're going to show you all how good we can be.
Yeah.
Something like that would have been better than to point the finger at a guy who's just asking the question that everybody wants to know the answer to.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think probably what got him was the fact that it was a tip man asking him the question. Like, I think it was Shane Brophy was of the Nina Guardian. You know, like, I mean, like, I think, you know, like, there's probably
Christmas card list.
Yeah, definitely not now. I think there's probably a relationship there. There's probably a friendship there potentially as well, because Liam Cahill's obviously been on the tip scene for so long, and obviously Shane probably has been in and around, you know, doing work for Tipperary over the last God knows how long. So I think it was probably that got to him. You know, it's a tip man asking the question. I think it's a very fair question, and I think it probably did hit a nerve, and probably because there's a lot of truth to it, and it hasn't really worked out, and there's probably frustration there from Liam Cahill, in fairness as well.
I've been there as well, just to defend Brophy as well. I've been there as well at those press conferences where you have a manager in front of you and you're asking him questions. And sometimes you do get a bit nervous when the manager looks you dead in the eye. And sometimes you can kind of trip over your words a little bit. And when I listen back to it, it kind of sounds like he is a bit nervous. Because I would say that you could sense that Cahill was vexed. And I feel like sometimes you're a bit like, you fumble your words a little bit and it comes out in a way that you didn't really mean it. That's what I was saying. Could he have phrased it better? I think so. But I think we all knew he wasn't saying, you're not the right man for the job. He was just saying, like, can you confirm you're staying on for another year?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and it wasn't like, you know, he jumped straight into it like Gary Lineker of the BBC, you know, and Man United just win an FA Cup final and straight away be like, will he be here next year? Like, do you know what I mean? You know, after he wins a cup final, do you know what I mean? So like, I thought it was fairly fair. And fairness, A2 says Clare too fragile mentally to win when a matter's body of evidence is there. Look, there's a lot of unknowns about Clare until they actually go and do it. Until they actually go and beat Limerick and win an All-Ireland semi-final, these same points will keep getting mentioned. But what do you think with Clare? Like, are they coming into the Munster final in better form, in your opinion, than last year, or whereabouts are they? Because they are very hard to judge. Like, I don't think necessarily they've regressed, but it's probably too early to say if they've actually. I mean, they did win the league. In fairness, the league is obviously a hard barometer to judge, but where would you look when it comes to Clare?
I think both of them are in worse form than they were last year. If I'm being 100% honest, I think Clare got some really notable wins last year against Cork and against Tip, and like they really, really looked solid. And then they'd also beaten Limerick this time last year. The Limerick-Clare game at the start of the championship, I thought both teams didn't play to the best of their ability. I was saying this to Dan today. I was like, ironically, I think Limerick's best performance in terms of like their own level of performance individually was probably the Cork game. Like, that they played best in that game. I don't think they played 10 out of 10 against Waterford or Tip. That Tip just rolled over for them, and Waterford, I thought they just kicked on in the last quarter especially, but there were patches where Waterford cut them open for the goals. So going into this final, I think they're both still kind of in third gear. I don't think they're anywhere near fifth gear. I don't think they're near their top level. So it'll be interesting to see which one of them explodes into life, because it is going to happen. Like, make no mistake about it. Before the year is out, we will see Limerick at their best. It's just whether or not Clare or Cork or Kilkenny or Dublin are good enough to stop them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. I think Clare is still there. I think Limerick are better than last season, in my opinion. I think like you remember last season in the Cork game when they won that, they weren't even supposed to be in a Munster final. It was just because Tipperary obviously lost against Waterford. But Raymond says here, Clare will improve. Think they're finding out that winning the league 2 weeks before the Munster round robin starts is not ideal preparation. Yeah, a lot of teams have struggled in the round robin after winning the league, so it is a fair point in fairness. But yeah, absolutely, like hugely looking forward obviously to the weekend, to the Munster final. Obviously not this weekend, the weekend after, and yeah, I'm sure we'll obviously preview and discuss that game when it comes around. The game's finished up in Leinster, and this is how the table finished up. So Kilkenny and Dublin are into the Leinster final. Wexford go into the preliminary round. Galway finish fourth. They miss out, so they are knocked out of the championship, and that is due to the head-to-head rule. They lost to Wexford earlier in the season, but they also did have a worse score difference there as well. Antrim, they survived. They beat Carlow. We'll get onto that game as well, and Carlow are relegated. So, look, I suppose we'll start with the Dublin game. It was Galway 124, Dublin 227. So an absolutely huge win from a Dublin perspective. A 6-point win for the Dubs. Keane says here, Dublin were magnificent yesterday, outclassed Galway in the end. Micheál Donoghue has got this Dublin moving in the right direction, and they have a great chance of winning the Leinster final. Obviously, the red card, plenty of discussion around that from David Burke's red card, but overall, like, I do think Dublin were by far the better side. And look, maybe if Galway have an extra man on the pitch and they finish with 15, it's a different game. You never know. Galway probably were playing the better hurling up until that point, but overall, fantastic win for Dublin going in, and a Leinster final now awaits.
Yeah, no, I'm buzzing with this one. I have to say, and like looking back on the chat that I had with Matthew before the weekend's action, that was on his show. Obviously, biggest shout out to Matthew. But we were talking about this game, and I narrowly went for Galway. Like, I have to hold my hands up. I said, I don't know if it's my head overruling my heart, but I was saying, I do think we can go there and beat them. I do believe we can, but I think Galway will wake up now that they are, literally their championship journey is on the line. I said, they've home advantage. I think they'll squeeze it. And in the first 10 minutes, I was thinking, I think I'm vindicated in my decision. Even though Dublin got the early goal, Galway looked sharp. And I was thinking, okay. But the same thing that I also said to Matthew was, I said, I don't see any resilience in that Galway team. I said, I think if something goes wrong in this game, or if Dublin get a run on them, I don't see Galway digging it out of the fire. I don't think they have enough belief in this management team. I don't think that the Galway fans have enough belief in them. I mean, it says it all when you see how little Galway fans turned out for a game where Galway's journey was on the line. Like, that says it all. Like, the fans, when there's empty fans in the stadium, that speaks volumes about how much the fans believe in the project that you are doing and how much you are working on it. Because look at how much the Cork fans turn up for their team now. Like, they completely dominated Semple Stadium for the Cork Tip game. They dominated Páirc Uí Chaoimh for the Cork Limerick game because they believe in their team and they believe in the ability that they have. You look at Tipperary and Galway on the other hand, they're not packing out stadiums because the fans don't believe in where the team is at right now. And I think the Galway fans on some level were like, you know what, even if we get by Dublin, we ain't going nowhere. We're not going to an All-Ireland this year. So that definitely impacted their willingness to turn up and support the team.
Yeah, I suppose the big question then, Fel says here, red card, yes or no? I think it was a red card. Or no, sorry, I don't think it was a red card, to be honest with you. I don't think it was. It was quite harsh, in my opinion. I think if that goes the other way, we, like, as Dublin fans, we'd be fuming. We'd be very, very annoyed.
Realistically,
I understand
both
why.
sides.
Yeah, like, I understand why the referee gives it, because, like, you look at the shoulder, it's just below the face, like in and around the neck area. I think it was a yellow. I think it was a yellow.
It was gas because when Jackie and Donald were talking, I actually agreed with both of them. I understood both of their points in terms of like Jackie saying that he didn't mean that. And I don't think he did. And Donald saying, well, he looks at him before he does it. He does eye him up and then bam. But the speed at which Fergal Whiteley is going, when you slow it down and show David Burke seeing him, it's already too late when David Burke's seen him to pull out of that. So I probably would say yellow card for me. I would have been happy enough with that.
Yeah.
And I still think Dublin would have won, by the way.
Yeah, like I think Dublin would have found their groove and would have got going eventually. I've no doubt about that. The argument, though, was Dublin were struggling at that stage. I think, what was it, 7 points to 1-1 or something? And
yeah.
I think Galway had hit 6 or 7 points on the bounce. Dublin were struggling at that point, but I don't think Dublin were struggling because of anything brilliant that Galway were doing. I think Dublin just hadn't got going. The ball wouldn't stick, and they kept trying to play that short passing game, the running game. And the thing is, when you're playing a running game, it has to work. It has to come off, because one mistake, then all of a sudden you have too many bodies up the field and you have a huge amount of space going down the other way. But like, I think where Galway lost this game, in my opinion, was the first half. Like, the amount of wides they had in that first half, the amount of chances they missed. And it was so evident from watching the game that there was a huge breeze that very much favoured Galway in the first half and favoured Dublin in the second half. And Galway didn't take advantage of that, in my opinion. Yes, obviously, they lose a man and everything else. But even at that, like, even when that red card happened, Galway probably should have been 6 or 7 points clear at that stage.
You'd imagine they should have been, but then on top of that, I would agree with you that they lost it because of the win. But my main thing that I think they lost it because of was their second half performance. I thought was not great at all. Their intensity wasn't there. It took them until the 62nd minute to score from play in the second half. Like, in the second half, it took them up until the 62nd minute. Like, that is mental. They scored 1-2 from play in the second half, and then tag on 3 Evan Nyland frees. Like, that is not good enough for Galway. And like, the main thing is you look at this, right, and you say to yourself, like, especially in the last few minutes, right, they get the goal from McLaughlin. And this is what I'm talking about with resolve and with resilience and everything like that. You have to work twice as hard when a man is sent off. You just have to do it. That's just the way that the game goes. You have to work. And the way that Galway just allowed Paddy Smith to just jog up to the half-back line and just have a pop, like, was just ridiculous. Like, no intensity, no work rate. They literally, like, I play basketball, and like, if there's someone on the other team that I think can't shoot, and if I'm knackered sometimes, if we're playing a mess around game like in training, I'll be like, I'll just let him have it, because I don't think he can shoot anyway. That's like what Galway did with Paddy Smith. They were just like, yeah, you won't score. And he just stepped up and banged it over the bar from about 50 metres out. And then Conor Donoghue does the same thing a minute later. And I remember watching it in the last few minutes, and I was thinking to myself before the game that I was saying, look, if Dublin win this game, it's clearly going to be a euphoric, like, yes, like, we've beaten Galway, 2019-esque. The last 5 minutes, I knew we had that game won. Galway weren't threatening at all. After they got the McLaughlin goal and Dublin responded with the 2 points from Smith and Donoghue, they weren't threatening. And like, Tom Monaghan literally got the ball and he only had a couple of Dublin defenders in his way, and there was a chance to try and make a goal opportunity there. And he just tapped it over the bar. And I was just like, what? That's it? Like, is there no, if you had the scoreboard off the screen and I came back into the room, I would think that Galway were in front by how they were playing in those last few minutes.
Yeah, it was bizarre. Like, even towards the end of the first half as well, though, like, they were dropping off on puck outs. Like, they'd every man inside their own.
Why were they letting Dublin have the short? That's it. Like,
yeah, it was very strange. Like, they were just allowing, and like, the thing with Dublin is where Dublin, in my opinion, struggled the most against Kilkenny, and we even saw in parts against Galway, was the puck outs. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was one area, and that is one area where Dublin still very much do struggle. Like, and because like, the thing is with Dublin, especially in the game versus Galway, and similar against Kilkenny, we're playing those short puck outs. We're trying to get a running game going. Like, if you put us under pressure, you'll probably turn us over because we're going to keep. We rarely hit long. Do you know what I mean? We rarely hit long. So yeah,
I think that's coming in the Leinster final. By the way, I think Kilkenny are going to come with plan to push right up.
Absolutely. And in terms of this window for Dublin, like, is this like a few comments here? Like, Sky Glass is scary. Dublin. A2 says ifs and buts for Galway. Ultimately, they got what they deserved for their performance over all the games. Absolutely. Like, they didn't beat Wexford, didn't beat Dublin, scraped Antrim really when you actually look at it, and obviously couldn't beat Kilkenny either.
Great Carlo as well.
It wasn't a red card, but that's because Whiteley raised his chin slightly just before the contact with Burke's shoulder. Burke was lucky he didn't make serious impact on Whiteley. Yeah, look, I mean, obviously for the Dublin hurlers, like, we saw them produce big wins in the past. We saw them beat Galway in 21. They then went on to a Leinster final. We saw the performance against Kilkenny a couple of weeks ago. Like, is this a flash in the pan, do you think, or are Dublin actually building something here? Because, like, when you look at the team, it really isn't too different. There's a few new additions here and there, but it really isn't too different from the Dublin team of last year and arguably even the year before as well.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. There's mainstays in that team that are producing astonishing form. Like, Owen O'Donnell has been there now for a good bit of time. You've got Danny Sutcliffe and Chris Crummy who've been there for a decade, and they were absolutely fantastic in the game there yesterday. Then if you move through the team, you have experienced campaigners all over the field for Dublin, and then on top of that, you have players that have come into the team over the last 4 years, like Donald Burke, Conor Burke, Paddy Smith, that are now rock solid and established in the team. And then you have the new breeds. You have like the Paddy Doyles at left half back, who was brilliant. You have Mark Grogan, you have Dara Power. Like, you have a lot of new lads in that team that are making their stamp on it. And this is a Dublin team that was without Cian O'Sullivan, who's been one of our best forwards. So there's definitely a lot to be proud of in that Dublin team. We've been absolutely fantastic. And it was a great win. And this is the other thing as well, as that I was saying, is we were the better side in that game. We didn't smash and grab that one. We were better than Galway. We went away to Pearse Stadium and we beat them. So we deserve our place in the Leinster final. And it would be an incredible achievement if we were to win the Leinster title. I would be absolutely buzzing, because we did fail to build on the Anthony Daly years. Like, it definitely fell away a lot after Dalo left. This time, let's try and build it in a more sustainable way. And the other thing as well, throwing back to this, was the players that I've named that are very much familiar names in the Dublin team. Like, Shefflin's comments at the end of the game where he said, like, oh, well, Dublin are a much younger, fresher team than us. So it's not that definitely. I'm like, you've been the manager for 3 years. Like, if you move into an apartment and then 6 months later there's no food in the apartment, you don't get to say, well, where's the food? You're the guy who's been there. You're the guy who has had the Martin McManuses, the Declan McLaughlins at your disposal, these young stars for Galway. And you haven't put them in the team enough. So you don't get to then turn around and go, well, you know, Dublin are a younger team than us, so... Like, you don't really get to do that, because especially like the players that I named there for Dublin, they're all around the same age as your Pádraig Mannions and your Conor Whelans and everything like that. They've been playing just as long as they have. So I don't really think that is a reason why Dublin won, that they're younger and more fresher. I think that both teams' age profiles are actually quite similar. And then the main reason that Dublin won, in my opinion, and look, Shefflin's post-match interviews were very good. It's just that one comment that I was a bit like, I don't know if I agree with you there. The last thing is, Dublin won the game because they wanted it more. Dublin won that game because they were willing to work harder, fight until the very end, and that's what ultimately got us to win.
Yeah, and I suppose the team that will be playing in the Leinster final will be Kilkenny. They came through Wexford 124 to 220. I'm not going to lie, I would have loved to seen Wexford in the final. Imagine a Dublin Wexford Leinster hurling final. It would have been quite the occasion, and fairness, but not meant to be. Kilkenny get over the line. TJ Reid with 113. Billy Ryan had a very good game as well. 3 points from him. Paddy Deegan, I thought, was very impressive. as well with 3 points. A game that wasn't without controversy. Obviously, Kilkenny's penalty was a little bit bizarre. No black card was given. The penalty was given though, so there's a mistake somewhere along the lines there from Liam Gordon. Although at the same time, there was, I don't know if you saw it in the first half, but I think it was Mossy Keown was running straight down on goal. He got pulled back outside the box and the ref didn't give a penalty. And that was clear as day a penalty. So bizarrely enough, like I feel like it evened itself out. But again, like two very poor decisions in my opinion.
Yeah, and again, this is where we're talking about when it comes to the inconsistencies. Like that referee will be back on another game next week. Like referees are never asked, what was the story with that? Why did you give? That could have been really decisive if there had been situations that would have led to Wexford potentially being out of the Leinster Championship. Like Wexford needed something out of that game for their own peace of mind. So it could have been very impactful on Kilkenny and Wexford this game and those penalty decisions and everything like that. So I'm always an advocate for that. You know me, like more respect for referees, more like harsh punishments for anybody who interferes with them or says anything to them or puts a hand on them or anything like that. But at the same time, referees should be asked, why did you give that decision? Why did you not give a black card? Tell me why you didn't give a black card. And then there should be people who are, like the linesman should be able to be like, is that not a black card, ref? Do you know what I mean? Like something that is like, because when you've got a referee who might genuinely just make an honest mistake, maybe he genuinely forgot to black card and we don't know. But the linesman in that situation should be able to go, black card, ref.
You'd have to assume that's what it was because, I mean, he gives the penalty. So it's, he's already doing the first part. So, yeah, it was a little bit strange. But ultimately for Kilkenny, like as we were saying earlier, they are unbeaten. They do finish the season unbeaten in the championship. I know that does sound, well, obviously they have the Leinster finals come up, but the round robin, they do finish unbeaten. It does sound a little bit strange because they drew with Carlow, which probably felt like a defeat. The Galway game as well, they probably should have won. Kilkenny, like they're not at their best. They obviously have injuries and everything else. Still have Adrian Mullen to come back in. Mikey Carey's obviously back now. He scored a point on the day. Owen Cody maybe still didn't look at his best. He only scored 1 point as an example, so it probably wasn't his best day at the office. But like Kilkenny are still there. Like they're just tipping away nicely. They're getting wins on the board, but like, is it a case that the levels have dropped off and maybe they're not as good as what we think they are, or have they just not clicked just yet? And maybe it's when they get to Croke Park that they're going to flick a switch and play some of the great hurling that we saw from last season.
I hope not. I hope they don't flick a switch until they're in the preliminary quarter-final against one of the John McDonagh teams. Oh, no, sorry, until they're in the quarterfinal against the John McDonagh Cup teams or Cork, because I want the Leinster Hurling Championship badly, man. We've waited long enough to get that Leinster Championship. It would be quite depressing, wouldn't it, if we had the most exciting, unpredictable Leinster Championship in recent memory and then Kilkenny win it at the end of it all for the 4th year in a row. Literally like... Especially considering they drew with Carlow and it's like, oh, this is, the most crazy, bizarre Leinster Championship ever. And then if Kilkenny just win it after all that, it would just be like, oh, okay, that was nice while it lasted. That illusion that anybody could win it. And then it ends up being the team that always win it who won it.
Yeah. If I ever, I don't know, I still would have Kilkenny as the favourites in my opinion. I think the fact that
I do as well, by the way. Like I think Kilkenny probably are favourites, but I give us a very good chance.
Yeah, like in the Croke Park factor as well, which could suit us, but it's hard to really know, like playing that type of game.
I don't understand why they would shut off the hill. I hope they don't.
No, hopefully not. Anyway, and I looked around, I haven't seen confirmation on that, but yeah, like it would be an absolutely disastrous decision. Like if the Leinster Council went ahead and done that, like you're opening up the hill for meaningless dead football championship games, which we'll get onto a little bit later. And then the Hurling Championship, you're cutting like, but yeah, we'll wait anyway until we get confirmation on that. In fairness, last game, Antrim 422, Carlow 222. There was another bizarre. Like I don't always want to reference refereeing decisions and everything else, but there was a bizarre sending off at halftime, which very much did influence the game. I think it was Chris Nolan. I'm just going to double check. I think it was
Chris Nolan.
Chris Nolan who got sent off. There was a huge scuffle, basically, before halftime. A lot of players involved. Looked like there was an Antrim player who fell over. It didn't look like a trip. Slight push, if anything, a yellow card. Definitely not a red card. So, unfortunately, it was James Owens again, who is at the centre of more controversy, unfortunately. But look, maybe Antrim would have won the game anyway. You don't quite know. They went on to win by 6 points. You have to give them credit, but that was a crazy decision.
Yeah, I've seen it. Like the left wing back put it up on their Twitter page. Obviously, big shout out to them. And just looking at it, it doesn't really look like anything happens that deserves a red card at all. Like it's a bit of handbags. There's no strike thrown. There's no malicious thing that happens there that you can see in the video. Maybe he did something that was off camera that the ref saw that he went for. This is what happens when you don't tell anyone. Like if the ref came out and said, I saw him punch someone.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you leave it there and just say, Chris Nolan got sent off, you leave us all to try and find out why he got sent off.
Yeah.
Because then we can only assume that he got sent off for what we saw.
Yeah.
And if that is what he got sent off for, he definitely didn't deserve to walk. And he'd already scored a goal in this game. He's Carlo's most important player, in my opinion, along with Kevin McDonald and Martin Kavanagh. So for him to go was massive. And Antrim put the final nail in the coffin in the second half with James McNaughton's second goal and Antrim's fourth in total. And that was that.
Yeah, no, it was just mental, all right. Like, and I suppose Carlo can, although they're going into the Joe McDonagh next year, like they can hold their heads up high for how they've performed, obviously in the Leinster Championship. And Antrim, obviously, they'll be very happy with 2 wins and obviously avoiding relegation in the process. Joe McDonagh did finish up, and this is the final table. Obviously, all the games were dead rubbers, but Laois and Offaly finish with 8 points. They both are through to the Joe McDonagh Cup final. Kerry in third with 6 points. Westmeath actually beat Laois at the weekend. They beat them 226 to 16 points. So a bit of a surprise win there. Maybe it was a dead rubber though for both sides. So maybe Laois completely switching off ahead of the Joe McDonagh Cup final. Down finished with 3 points and Meath are relegated. The other 2 games were Kerry 313, Meath 110, Down 325 and Offaly 523. Just on that, who would you reckon will win that Joe McDonagh Cup final in a couple of weeks' time?
It's going to be a very interesting one, and the Joe McDonagh has been very interesting this season. But Laois and Offaly, right from the get-go, have stamped themselves down as being the 2 best teams in the competition. They've looked on a one-way ticket out since the competition started. So it's going to be a very interesting final. Obviously, a double header with the Leinster final. Like, there's going to be a lot of Laois and Offaly fans that will turn out. There's going to be a lot of Dublin Kilkenny fans that will take note of how they're looking as well. Obviously, that they'll be playing in the Leinster Championship next season, whoever wins. So I probably would lean towards Laois. I think Offaly definitely are progressing. There's no doubt about it. And like, they have the players like Young Screeney and Charlie Mitchell and all these lads coming into the side. But Laois are more experienced, and they have got over the line in the Joe McDonagh more recently than Offaly have. And they have operators like Enda Rowland, Paddy Purcell, the Dunphys that are just so experienced. And I feel like when it really comes down to it, Laois will find that extra gear and get over the line. But I probably would go with Laois. They definitely weren't going hell for leather in the Westmeath game. Westmeath beat them, but it was a disappointing campaign for Westmeath. I thought Westmeath would bounce back and get out. Kerry had an alright campaign but miss out on the final. Down saved themselves, and Meath go down.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I suppose we'll crack on with the football action and some of the games taking place in the football championship. I don't know about you, first of all, though. Like, there was a few comments like that were flying in, obviously, on YouTube videos yesterday, and I was at the Dublin Roscommon game. I put out a tweet basically on my own profile, basically, I suppose, mentioning the attendance of the Dublin Roscommon game. And I suppose we'll start with that just because I think it is a huge talking point. It was Dublin 219, Roscommon 13 points. Very comfortable win in the end. I think the scoreline flattered Dublin, to be honest with you. I don't think it was a 12-point win. It was like 4 points going into the final 5 minutes. But like the attendance, I think it was 8.5. I actually think there was there's been a lot of different reports in terms of the attendance.
Yeah,
Some
I've
people have
heard
said
a lot of numbers flying around.
Yeah, some people are saying 13,000, some are saying 10. It wasn't announced in Croke Park, and when they're not announcing it, it's because there's fucking nobody there. Like, let's be honest, but very, very poor attendance. Like, as bad as I've seen it in Croke Park, in all honesty, and like and the worrying thing is, like, this wasn't a Leinster Championship game. This was an All Ireland football championship game. Is it the format? Is it the fact that there's a lack of jeopardy? Roscommon didn't need to win this game. Losing the game, it didn't matter, because ultimately they're what matters for them is going to be Mayo and Cavan. This game was basically it didn't matter in the slightest to them, in all honesty. I think we all knew Dublin were going to win the game. Just feels like the football championship has been very, and I don't know if it's because a lot of the same teams are playing each other as well, but I don't know. I think the football championship has just been very boring so far this year, I think. In comparison to Hurling, anyway.
It's like they put the foot down on the accelerator and then hit the brake real quick, and then hit the accelerator again and then hit the brake. And because, like, Desi Farrell was saying it in his press conference after the Meath game, that he was like, you get to such a high level when the league is finishing up and Dublin are playing against Kerry and they're hitting top form, and they're playing against Derry in the league final and they're playing out one of the best games of football that we have seen. And then it just completely falls off a cliff before the Meath game. Like, it just completely falls off a cliff. And you're left there wondering, like, Dublin don't have any competition up until the Leinster final against Louth, where Louth definitely challenged them. But in this game, just in terms of the general style of play, I do personally think that we need to start looking at some sort of a shot clock. Like, I really do, because I was there at the game and as well, man, and I was over in the Hogan stand, and I know you were in the hill, like I seen your tweet, and like, just in the general play, like, I'd love to get your opinion on it as well. Just the general play, like a general move. Both teams, just their general move of when they got the ball is not exciting.
No,
it's just not
it was just a very laboured game, and I thought it was, I think the Louth Meath game had plenty of excitement. I think Donegal Tyrone was probably somewhat similar to this game, where it was just very laboured. It was like Donegal Tyrone game probably a bit more excitement, in fairness, but this game it did just feel very laboured. It felt like an air of inevitability about it. And again, I don't think Roscommon actually played, like, they lost by 12, but I actually don't think they played that badly. Like, their shooting was actually very, very good. And, like, fair enough, they lost by 12. It looks like a hammering and everything else, and there's more pressure maybe building on Davy Burke. But I don't think they played that badly, to be honest with you. I actually think they can take a bit of confidence going into the Mayo game.
Yeah, they came with a game plan. There's no doubt about it. They came with a game plan. They were saying, I think that they were looking at last year and they were going, you know what, we were close to Dublin last year. We should have won that game. I thought that they looked at Louth as well and looked at what they themselves had done last year. And they said, look, we just need to stay in the game until the last quarter. And then in that last quarter, we'll spring Ben O'Carroll off the bench. We'll spring Ultan Harney off the bench. And that's the type of vibe I got the minute I saw their team. Once I saw Ben O'Carroll not starting, Ultan Harney not starting, I was like, okay, you know what? I think Roscommon are going to wait until the last 15 minutes and then go for it. And I think they did. And once the game loosened up, the dam broke and Dublin stitched them up for 2 goals. And once Dara Craig hit that point, I think it was in the 54th minute, that put just 2 points between the teams. I think that made it 15-13. Or what did Roscommon finish with? 13 or 14 points Roscommon finished on? 14?
Yeah.
13. So I think that made it 15-13. Roscommon 2 behind, and that was their last point. Dublin hit 2 goals and 5 points. 2-4, in the last quarter. Like, you cannot do that against Dublin. And the Conor Callaghan goal was a vintage Dublin counter-attacking move. But in terms of, like, the general play, whenever teams get the ball now, especially in games against Dublin, whoever plays against them, the general move of just in your regular average GA match now, pretty much across the board, that all teams now, they all hold the ball and just pass it backwards and sideways. And then they move it forward in a very controlled, very, like, zero risk approach. There's no contests anymore. There's no high ball going, there's no 2 midfielders going up to win ball anymore, or a full back and a full forward going up to catch a ball. Like, that doesn't really happen anymore. So I think if you were to introduce like some form of a shot clock, and I think it's something that just needs to be actually speculated. How can we encourage teams to attack more? Because if you look at it, like I would say a shot clock of 2 minutes, try that, a shot clock of 2 minutes in the league. Because if you have the ball for 2 minutes and you do nothing with it, you deserve to be turned over. If you had the ball for 2 minutes and you did nothing with it, that's not going to be entertaining to watch. And at the end of the day, it's a sport, but it's also part of entertainment. And people who pay their money to sit down and watch a game should be entertained. And like just that, like, I don't know, it's just in general, just the zero risk taking. It just isn't the best thing to watch. And the thing is that like my dad was saying to me, he was like, but the average level of scores have gone up. Like Dublin are scoring more in matches than they would have scored 15 years ago. I'm saying, yeah, they are, but and every team is, for that matter. Every team is scoring more now than they would have 15 years ago, but they're not taking any risks. And if you're saying, oh, the shot clock, oh, well, every team would get done for that. Initially, yeah, there'd be a few teams that would get caught for that. But you look at a game in the 1990s and you look at a game in the 2000s, the early 2000s. Well, let's be honest, football was more entertaining to watch. Like, I'm not talking about the top games. I'm talking about, like, you throw on a Division 2 league match. It's going to be more entertaining to watch than a Division 2 league match today.
Yeah.
But you put on any one of those matches and just see, I guarantee not any of those teams will get caught with a 2-minute shot clock violation.
Yeah.
Because it was all catch and you boot that ball down the field. There's none of that anymore. But I think it would gradually move back towards that if you implemented the shot clock. Basketball used to not have the shot clock. 1954. There was the worst game of basketball of all time. Do you know about this?
No, I know much about basketball as I know about. I don't know. I won't say.
But in basketball, they had in the 1950s, they had the worst game of basketball of all time, where it finished something like 16 points to 12 in basketball, which is astonishingly bad. That's the score after like a minute now. But basically, they implemented the shot clock because they were like, we can't have that again.
Yeah.
And now basketball is so entertaining. Like you watch that, you know that every time they have the ball, they're attacking. There is no keep ball.
Yeah, Skyglass says here, let's be honest, people would only show up if there's a concert, an all-Ireland core, semi-final, or Dublin versus Kerry, or Dublin versus Mayo, etc. Kind of is gone that way. Kind of is gone that way. Porter says Donegal form. Bit of good news for football. Yeah, it is true. We'll get on to that. Jack says Dublin, Kerry, Donegal, Galway. Presume you mean the contenders there. The whole country will be shouting for the Dubs. It will be some ask though, says Fell. I think that was in relation to the Dublin hurlers. And Porter says Kerry, and pundits will soon be writing them off again as every year. 30-something All Irelands. Yeah, like I don't know. I think it's silly if people are writing off Kerry. Do you know the way? Like I certainly would not be writing them off. I think that would be a bit silly. But look, just on the performance overall for Dublin. I mean, Con scores 1-4. Paul Mannion 2 points. Looked a lot more bright. Ross McGarry was very good. Con Califf, he comes off the bench, gets a goal. More game time for Jack McCaffrey. But again, like really since the league, we just haven't really learned much at all about Dublin. We probably won't. Yeah. You know, we probably won't really know where they're at until those quarterfinals come around. You know, we know they're going to be contenders. We know they're still the favourites. They're doing their thing. But in terms of they're not really getting any tests. Hopefully the Mayo game is a test, and obviously, as we know, should be outside Croke Park, which will be a welcome relief, I think, to everyone at this stage.
I would actually relish a road trip down the country to watch Dublin play Mayo in Thurles.
Yeah, Gaelic grounds even as well.
That would be class.
Yeah, that would be vintage. In fairness, like we'll see what happens. We will certainly see what happens. In fairness, A2 says more atmosphere and space than Croker on Saturday. Depressing and embarrassing. Gets out Croker to the quarterfinals. Most fans would love the road trips and novelty. Good for local pubs, communities, etc. Yeah, it's mad really. Like I think the big issue, and I don't want to get too much into it, but the fact that Parnell Park, the attendance is 8,500, 9,000, an absolute push. Until the attendance drops a good bit below that amount, say in Croke Park, like there's not, like, say for example 10, 15,000, 20,000, and then I know some people are saying, well, take Dublin out of Dublin and give them home games in Tullamore. I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go about it either.
No,
but look, that's how it is, and I'm sure the conversation and everything else will rumble on. Donegal 21 points, Tyrone 14 points. Tyrone, I suppose it was a very similar game to the Ulster semi-final. The only difference, obviously, was that Donegal pulled away. Tyrone kept battling back into the game. Oisin Gallen, very, very impressive from a Donegal perspective. And Tyrone had their moments, but overall, a fairly comfortable win for Donegal. Like Kieran Thompson, 2 points from him. Jason McGee with 2 points. Patrick McBirthy obviously starts, gets 2 points there as well. So yeah, fairly comfortably enough there from a Donegal perspective.
Yeah, no, this one wasn't as tight as the last one. It definitely looked like it was going exactly the same way as the Ulster game had gone. The first half was literally neck and neck, back and forth, tit for tat. And Donegal led by the minimum at the break. I was thinking, here we go, second half is going to be raised at 10 again. It was that way. And then McGeary got Tyrone's final point. Kieran McGeary, that is, got Tyrone's final point in the 56-minute. Tyrone ran out of gas in the final quarter, and Donegal powered on, hit the last 5 points unanswered to get a much more comfortable win than it was last time. Like, they really, really are something serious under McGuinness. They're the only unbeaten team in championship football this year. Not in championship football. They're the only unbeaten team in inter-county football in 2024. Every other county has been beaten at least once. Donegal have not, and there's a reason for that. McGuinness has come in with the game plan again. All the players look like they've just gotten 25% better overnight under McGuinness. They all know their roles. They all know what they're supposed to do. And yeah, Jimmy keeps winning matches.
Yeah, like I think the only game they've lost all year was the McDonagh Cup final. I think the Derry, I think it was.
From league on, yeah.
Yeah, but in the league, and yeah, you wouldn't even count. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't know who cares about.
Yeah, I mean, Longford beat Dublin and that. Like, come on, like
Longford are back-to-back Oberon Cup champions. Still haven't got out of Division 4.
Yeah, but in saying that though, in league, yeah, I think they've drawn one game, and I think they've won something like 11 games and drawn one. Like, it's serious stuff from Donegal. In fairness, like, and they're definitely in a very good position to win the group. Sky Glasses Donegal are back. They've waited 10 years. Let's see if they deliver. Jimmy winning matches, says Porter, and Porter says, well, Derry fine form. I'll leave out your other part of your comment there, but yeah, look, I think Derry might find form. They could find form. yeah, trying to wheel us in there, but no, look, I think Derry will find form. Look, they're certainly not gone. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They're certainly not going anywhere. Louth 310, Meath 9 points. Louth's first win since 1975 against Meath. Quite the statistic. However, before mentioning the game, I do want to say an incredible story, well, a very sad story actually. But Matthew Costello, his dad, fortunately passed away in the build-up to this game. He still played. He scored the first point. And I think what I was getting to was the incredible resilience shown there by the young lad to go out and play. Again, like we saw something similar, obviously, with David Clifford last year. Like, it's incomprehensible to me, to be honest with you, to be playing a game of Gaelic football after losing a parent. But, like, Jesus, like, you wouldn't have the words really to describe that, to be honest.
Yeah, no, like, I want to echo that. My biggest, deepest condolences to Matthew Costello, to everyone of the Costello family. Paul Costello was, his dad passed away, and Matthew still goes out, suits up and represents his county and hits the first point of the day. Like, just such bravery, such determination, and such leadership as well from such a young man. And O'Rourke said that, like, that Costello insisted on playing. And yeah, like, for such a young man, like, he's still in his early 20s. Like, I'm probably the same age as Matthew. Like, it's just a staggering level of character to show, to go out and represent your county. And just want to wish that Paul rests in peace, and deepest condolences to Matthew and to the whole Costello family, and to anybody in Dunshaughlin as well who is affected by the tragedy, anybody in Meath, anyone in general. And Matthew, like, you did Paul proud. Deepest condolences.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. In terms of the game, big win for Louth. First, obviously, win against Meath since 1975. In fairness, look very comfortable in the end for Louth. Like, they raced into an early lead, 3 goals all coming in the first half. Samuel Roy finishing with 1-6. Craig Lennon, 2-1 from him. What a player he is for this Louth side. Massive win from a Louth perspective. And look, as we said, they beat Dublin. It was about going out and asserting themselves and reconfirming their position as the second best team in Leinster. And in fairness, they have gone and done that. Like, there's no getting away from it now. Like, they are the second best team in the Leinster Championship. Obviously, there's a bit of a distance between them and the Dubs still, but Louth are trickling along nicely. And looking at the form of Monaghan, they have Monaghan next. Louth, getting a home draw in those prelim quarterfinals, I think it's very possible for Louth. It really, really is.
Yeah, it definitely is. You look at how bad Monaghan were against Kerry in round 1, and I was genuinely watching the Kerry Monaghan game, and I was like, Louth would give Kerry a better run than this. Louth would give Kerry a better game than this. And I know that they didn't last year, but they definitely are digging their heels in more this year. Dublin washed them away last year. Dublin found it difficult against them this year. So I think, look, GA math doesn't always add up. Maybe Kerry sweep them again this year, but I think Louth are going to give them a better game this time. You have this situation here where on paper everybody will look at it and say, well, Meath will beat Louth. Louth are legit. They've been getting better and better now over the last few years, and I personally thought with Mickey going, I thought they were going down out of Division 2 and they would slip back a lot. I genuinely thought that. Hands up, they have proven me more wrong than they could have possibly proved me wrong. They have absolutely shown me up. They have been fantastic. Jerry Brennan, for his first year as an inter-county manager, has been astonishingly good with them. And they continue to roll on.
Yeah, I didn't fancy them to go down, but I thought they'd be regression, to be honest with you, and I don't think there has been regression.
Well, when you look at Limerick, for example, I'm not saying that Louth are they're definitely not comparing Louth to Limerick, but there was one time where the two teams were actually fairly close.
Getting promoted, yeah.
Louth and Limerick got promoted together. And when you see Louth narrowly beat Limerick in the Division 3 final, and when you see how Limerick have just collapsed since Billy Lee left, I thought we might see something similar when Mickey left.
You could arguably say they actually look better.
Yeah, I think they do. They definitely played better against Dublin.
Yeah, and the amount of goals they're scoring, I think that's 25 goals now in both league and championship.
Well, so there was some stat as well. That's the first time Dublin have conceded 2 goals since 2017.
In Leinster, I think, yeah. Which is absolutely crazy, and I think it's the first time Cluxton conceded 2 goals. I think in
that's rare as well. Cluxton don't concede goals like that.
So that absolutely mental. But fair play to Louth. Look, I think of my predictions, I backed them to finish second and in the group, and I think it's looking very likely. You would expect a response from Monaghan. Don't get me wrong; there has to be a response from them, but I think Louth are taking along very, very nicely indeed. Armagh, they are back on track. Good win for them versus Westmeath. 16 points to 11. Fairly comfortable stuff for the Yorkshire county. They had to bounce back after their defeat to Donegal in the Ulster final, and they have done so. Rory Grugan, 5 points from him. There was no Rian O'Neill. He was injured. Conor Turba, 2 points from him. Stephen Campbell, Andrew Murnan, Oisin Conity all getting on the score sheet as well. Fairly comfortable for Armagh. Westmeath, 5-point defeat. They made a game of it. They tried to do what they could do, but not as close as what it was when these two played each other last year.
Yeah, it wasn't as close, but it definitely is just one that Armagh needed to get through. Westmeath are a tricky side. They're always going to dig their heels in. They're always going to make it difficult for you. And they have some cracking players. And when you see how much Armagh struggled with down in the Ulster Championship, and you see how much Armagh struggled with Westmeath last year in the group stages at the exact same point of the championship, there was always the question of Westmeath could make this difficult for Armagh. And they did for long periods. But for Armagh, for me, it's one of those just get through it, especially after losing on penalties. Just get back in the winning column, get a win back under the belt, and carry on. This one didn't need to be a fancy win that grabbed all the headlines. You just need to go there, do the job, and get out. And that's what they did.
Yeah, like for Westmeath, you felt like maybe this was the best chance for them to pick up points. Like I think next up they've Galway at home. Galway in very good form. Like it's looking like Derry might even need a win potentially to even stay in the championship when they play them. So you felt like with Armagh, with their fragility and everything else, fragileness, obviously having lost the Ulster final, you felt like if there was a game for them to get points, it was probably this one. But as you said, like not meant to be.
Yeah, no, that's it. And like I think that they would be looking at this one and saying like big opportunity missed, because Galway seem to have found themselves again. And Derry, as you said, are rattled by the fact that they didn't get that. And if Armagh go and beat them, which I think a lot of people are actually tipping to happen, then Derry all of a sudden really need to beat Westmeath. So I think, yeah, big missed opportunity for Westmeath. But I'm looking forward to the Armagh-Derry game. I'll be keeping very close tabs in it, because if Derry go out there and lose 3 in a row,
yeah, like, then there's massive question marks. Then there was massive question marks.
Because I think when you at the start of the season you were saying to yourself, like, Mickey being a Tyrone legend, like I was thinking, while I was definitely buying into how good they are, because I saw them go toe to toe with Dublin in a way that I haven't seen anybody do in such a long time. Like in terms of that, Dublin were on it, but Derry were just as good as them. I was also like, I wonder what Mickey and Derry will be like when they hit turbulence.
Yeah, we're seeing that now.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, no, looking forward to next weekend's games. In fairness, some absolute crackers. A2 says Louth are getting to a quarter final. Wouldn't surprise me if they have a right cut of Kerry. I would agree with that. Would certainly agree with that, especially if they can play similarly to how they played against Dublin. I think they have a massive chance.
I think Kerry have to be bold in that game. I think they have to push right up on them.
Yeah.
You get up and go man to man with them, because they're going to try and do what they did against Dublin, as in hold on to the ball for as long as they can.
Yeah, every man inside their own 30-meter line. Without
I think Kerry need to just go, okay, we're going to go up and go toe to toe with you.
I suppose before we finish up, then, player of the week, moment of the week, what would you be thinking?
On a completely non-biased note, moment of the week, Dublin beating Galway. And player of the week, I would probably give it for his performance. I thought Chris Crummey was immense. I thought he was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I'd go player of the week in hurling. Yeah, Chris Crummey. Football.
Kyle Hayes deserves a shout as well.
Yeah, Kyle Hayes definitely deserves a shout. Football, I'd probably go Craig Lennon. Thought he was outstanding 2-1.
Craig Lennon or Oisin Gallen.
Oisin Gallen, yeah, definitely deserves a mention. Moment of the week, I think hurling, Dublin beating Galway, no doubt about that. And probably moment of the week in football, obviously with Matthew Costello playing and the resilience shown and everything else. I think you'd have to go and mention that. In terms of football, there wasn't really too many great moments or great games, to be fair. Louth beating Meath, to be fair, first time since 75, huge for them, in fairness. So yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Anyone who did tune in, if you could hit the like button and subscribe, that would be great. Make sure to check out Seamus's YouTube channel as well on Clithe, and make sure to subscribe over there as well. And anyone tuning in on any audio podcasts, if you could leave the podcast a rating, that would be great. And we'll speak to you all in the next one.